So thank you. This is when the excited nerves come into play. So I'm going to start my talk today, and I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story about Ian. Ian was a fourth-year biological science student that I studied as part of a research project exploring students' learning and experience that was here at UBC. During our conversation, he told me that he actually failed 4 out of 5 of his midterms in his first semester in his first year. This left him extremely distraught. He was upset, he was frustrated, confused. He couldn't even remember the last time he failed a test or quiz, and he was a straight A student in high school. He didn't really know what to do, and after about a week's time, he called the one person he knew could help him through this situation, his mom. So they talked for a while about his situation and what his options might be. And even though they said that there's a lot of people and resources out there that could help him mediate this situation, it was he that needed to take the responsibility for his learning, to become an advocate for his learning. And Ian said that despite these shortcomings in his first year, he did manage to pass all his courses, but he realized that learning is hard, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes support from many other people. But he knew that if he didn't put this work in, he'd have to take what he could get. Now, I'm sure that many of us can relate to this situation. We may know someone that's been through a similar experience, or we may have experienced such failure ourselves. In a survey I conducted with 600 undergraduate science students, there was 100% of them wanted to succeed academically, and yet 90% of them expressed that at some point during their degree, they actually really struggled with adapting and developing their study and learning strategies. From my research and my teaching, as an ultimate Frisbee coach, a tutor, and as a student myself, I've come to notice how common it is for all of us in our educational and our professional careers to come face to face with hurdles that challenge us and that really overwhelm us. It is these hurdles that can make us question our own intentions and also make us question the path we are currently traveling. Now, there's 3 things I can take from Ian's story that I think can actually help us to overcome our hurdles. The first is that we actually acknowledge these hurdles, acknowledge these challenges and barriers. The second is that we seek support from others and that we actually find the courage to do this. And the third, as cheesy as it does sound, is to actually believe in ourselves. Now, these 3 things may sound obvious. They sound obvious to me, and they're things I've probably been told many times in my life. But it's not always easy to actually acknowledge our weaknesses, to seek help from other people, and to know how to implement for positive change. These are things that are very difficult. However, I've seen people overcome their challenges. And that's a bit what I'd like to share with you today. So I'm going to tell you about another student. I'm going to call her Alice. And she shared with me a very personal and raw story. That while we think learning is something that may happen into a classroom or be related to grades, there are many other factors in our lives that come into play that actually shape our learning experience. A student once told me that it's more about what goes on in your personal life that really dictates how well you do in school. Now, Alice told me that throughout her entire schooling, her parents had this pressure on her to succeed academically. This pressure that she was going to be a doctor and she was going to support the family. And even if she felt she was getting a stellar grade, she never felt that her parents were proud of her. And she decided that this pressure was too much for her, so in her second year, she moved out of her parents' house. She got a part-time job, and she dropped her workload from 5 courses to 3 courses. And then she actually sought counseling and went to academic advisors to help her through this extreme change. And Alice isn't alone in this situation. A quarter of the students I surveyed, that's 150 students, almost about half of us here, mentioned that the pressure they received from their family or the pressure they felt from their family was really limiting their learning. And that this pressure was something that almost made them feel like they were sinking, that they couldn't swim, they could no longer tread water. But at the same time, for some students, this type of pressure was a motivation. It was a fuel for them. It was a reason for them to strive for their best. You know, they knew they wanted to support their families, so they worked hard, they volunteered, they worked. And even for Alice, she said that if it weren't for this pressure, she never would have been able to stand up to her parents, she wouldn't have gained an independence, and she wouldn't have been able to pursue her passion. She wanted to be a nurse, and although her parents wanted her to be a doctor, she realized that nursing was what she wanted to do the most. And while we sometimes feel like we're sinking, the pressure does help us to swim, as I said before, and what helps us to swim is the support and the encouragement from other people. Over 500 students that I've talked to have told me that support and encouragement from those around them are really what helps them to succeed in their learning. For Alice, she actually said she never would have got through what she did without counselors and advisors, and her partner and his family as well. And while it's important to acknowledge the potential that other people have on our learning, we ourselves probably play the most important role in our learning. Our behaviors, our motivations, and our actions can both limit and promote how we engage in school, how we engage with others, how we work with others. And sometimes we are our own worst barrier to success, but we are also our own best supporter. In an interview, a student called herself stupid 17 times within a 45-minute time span. I was kind of unnerved by this, so I brought it to her attention, and she said she knew she called herself stupid, but she never realized the extent to which she had done this. She realized that maybe it was her self-confidence that was limiting her learning. A year later, we decided to do a follow-up interview, and she thanked me for the opportunity to talk about her experience, as she had never really done this before. She went to counseling services, she also got an academic advisor, and they helped her to balance her confidence and also to balance her responsibilities. And this is never something that's easy, as they always say, we're our own worst critic. Even myself, people tell me I always come across as confident and fun and exciting. However, I doubt myself. There are times when I question, am I fulfilling my role as a researcher, a teacher, a student, a partner, a sister, a daughter? And I really question what I'm doing in those situations. And sometimes, I don't know if I'm asking students the right question, if I'm creating a positive space for communication. It's a hard time. However, what I have realized is that while I have these self-doubts, that it's not always how other people are interpreting my actions. A student I interviewed, she referred to herself as shy, as introverted, and insecure, as someone that kept to herself. She didn't consider herself to be overly popular or have a lot of friends. And she had said that, she was okay with not really engaging with other people in class or with her instructors. And these qualities were apparent in the interview for me, as when I'd ask her questions, she'd really only respond with 1 to 5 word responses. It was really hard for me as a researcher. I continually had to question her, to get her to elaborate, to expand on these ideas. Can you tell me more about that? What do you mean? I felt a bit like a counselor, like I was trying to pull these ideas from her. And yet, at the end of the interview, I have to admit, I was exhausted from having to ask these questions. I really didn't feel like she was getting anything out of this experience about talking about her learning. And then I was like, maybe I let her down. However, right before she left my office, she turned around and she started to thank me profusely. This was the first time, pretty much in her entire life, that she had had the confidence to go to talk to someone about her learning. It was the first time that she shared with someone her opinion, her experiences. So again, we decided to do a follow-up interview a year later, and she was thrilled to tell me that she had actually landed an internship at Microsoft. And that she found she had developed over the year what she referred to as a quiet confidence. In talking with students, I'm in a position that I help to get students explore and reflect on their strengths and weaknesses, on the current hurdles that they're trying to overcome. And it's not only important to consider what our hurdles are, but how we have overcome them in the past. What are our strengths? Oftentimes we forget to think, what are we good at? What do people like? How do they compliment us? And that's really important. I'm also in a position where I then get to share these stories with people like you, and I also get to talk to administration and faculty and other students to see how we can help enhance learning and experience and start discussing our own issues. I'm also in a position where I get to learn from and with, alongside these students, where I get to reevaluate my own roles as a researcher, a teacher, and a mentor. As a researcher, teacher, a mentor, a coach, and a friend, I've seen blame. I've seen stress. I've seen fear. I've seen tears. And most of all, I've seen people say, I can't. But at the same time, I've seen passion. I've seen excitement. I've seen joy. I've seen people want to be vulnerable. And I've seen students overcome challenges that they never thought possible. What helped people to do this is that they actually acknowledged what their challenges are. They then sought help from others. And they then, again, as cheesy as it does sound, they actually believed in themselves. They believed that they could change, that they could receive positive change. In these interviews and in the surveys and the work I do with students, I'm acting as a vehicle, as a catalyst for people to actually reflect on their learning. So what I encourage you to do, and I know it's hard at times, but is over the next week, even today, as Gary mentioned before, that idea of jotting something down. Think about what your challenges are right now. Which ones do you think you can overcome in a day or two, and which ones do you see as sort of a lifetime goal? What do you want to work towards? And talk to someone about them. So we've already mentioned in the TEDx video, they say, introduce yourself to people. We have the fancy name tags, and we can do that. So share your concerns with someone. But more importantly, we also need to be able to know how to listen. As a researcher, that's probably my main role, is to listen. At times I do feel like a counselor, and I do not have training in counseling. But we need to listen to others, and then that's what helps us reevaluate our own weaknesses and our strengths as well. So what I'd like to leave you with today is a little bit of a lesson. That often what we think are our biggest hurdles are what lead us to realize our greatest potential. Thank you.